We're honored and privileged this evening in having Dr. Shelton to address us on the subject, natural hygiene for the recovery of health. Dr. Shelton is the world's foremost exponent of natural hygiene. He is the author of a great many books on natural hygiene and author and publisher of the magazine Dr. Shelton's Hygienic Review. He maintains the Dr. Shelton Health School in San Antonio, Texas, where literally thousands of despairing and discouraged health seekers have found and regained their health. He has lectured extensively through the country, and his combined works of writings, lectures, and teachings have spearheaded the natural hygiene health movement, which is rapidly spreading throughout the world. On behalf of the Rochester Natural Hygiene Society and our friends in the audience, we extend to you, Dr. Shelton, our greetings and welcome, and we are very happy and grateful that you included Rochester in your present speaking itinerary. Likewise, I extend to all of you in the audience our greetings and welcome, and I feel perfectly safe in promising you, health-wise, a very inspiring and profitable evening. Now, following the lecture, there will be a question and answer period, and you are all invited to write questions on the cards as they occur to you during the lecture and hand them in to the usher, and they will be answered by Dr. Shelton. And please don't be bashful. See if we can stick him with at least one question tonight. It is now my distinct honor and privilege to present to you Dr. Shelton.
Do we have to have this thing here?
Not for you, but for me.
I see. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to be here this evening. I'm happy for the opportunity to discuss the subject of hygiene and the recovery of health for you. I'm happy that I was able to include your city in my itinerary. I hope that I can live up to the introduction that has just been given me. Sometimes I wish these introductions were less flowery, because then I don't have to do so good. I judge from the remarks of the chairman that not all of you are members of the Rochester Natural Hygiene Society. Perhaps you do not even know what hygiene is. Oh, I know all of you have been to school and you've learned the things that were called hygiene in your school books. You know how to brush your teeth and how to wash your hands and take a bath occasionally, at least every Saturday night. You know those things. And that's what you learned as hygiene in high school and in grade school. But that is not what we mean by natural hygiene. And I might say that all the hygiene there is natural. And the only reason we add the term natural to our term hygiene is to distinguish it from the spurious type of hygiene that is commonly taught in our schools and colleges. At the time the system known as the hygienic system came into existence more than 130 years ago, attention to hygiene was not known. Strange as it may appear to you, people did not bathe. As a matter of fact, a good strong body odor was considered to be a sign that one was a good working man. Patients were not bathed. People did not ventilate their homes. They kept their windows down, the shades drawn. They did not permit sunshine to get into the house. The hospitals were places the stench of which was so foul that it was difficult to remain in them, much less to get well in them. patients were denied fresh air. The windows were closed. The doors were closed. And if the nurse or the attendant had to go in or out, the door was barely open, just enough that they could slide quickly through it and close it right quick. Cotton was stuffed in the keyholes. Everything was done to see that no fresh air got into the room of the patient. The patient was actually denied water to drink, as well as bathing. This was true not only in the homes, but in the best hospitals of the time. The hospitals were equally unventilated. No attention was given by the various medical professions of that time to hygiene. And when the hygienic system was originated and promulgated, it made rapid progress among the people, despite the opposition of the medical professions, with occasional exceptions in those professions. It grew to such an extent that finally the medical profession began to take cognizance of the value of hygiene. And would you believe it that sometime between 1880 and 1890, the first medical college in the world put in the first chair in hygiene in the college. After nearly 3,000 years, they began to give a little attention to hygiene, but they perverted it. So we found it necessary to add that word natural and make it natural hygiene in order to distinguish it from the spurious type or the perverted type that is commonly taught. Hygiene is the intelligent use of the primordial requisites of life in the care of the mind and the body, both in health and in sickness. Now, it is a basic principle of hygiene that while there are normal requisites of life that the sick organism may not be able temporarily to make use of, there is never a time in life, sick or well, when it can make use of substances and influences and agents that it does not need and cannot use in a state of health. This means, of course, that all that great mass or catalog of poisons that is contained in the pharmacopoeias of the world and that are employed or have been employed in the treatment of the sick by the various medical professions, all of which are poisons, as I have mentioned, have no value either in health or in sickness. We know very well that if you give them to a well man, they make him sick. We know equally as well that if you give them to a sick man, they make him sicker. They do not have one effect in the body of the sick and an opposite effect in the body of the well. They produce disease or cause disease under all conditions and circumstances of life. When introduced into the body must resist them, it must expel them, and it must repair damages. And the processes of resistance, of expulsion, and repair that follow the ingestion of these poisons into the body have in the past been mistaken for the actions of the drugs. I am quite sure that every one of you have used the expression many times in your life in speaking of some particular drug that you took, let us say, for constipation, that drug acts on the bowels. Actually, the action is on the part of the bowels, and the action is intended to expel the drug. It is an expulsive effort. The drug is just as inert when taken into the human digestive system as it is while still in the box or bottle on the druggist shelf. It can no more act in the human stomach or in the human intestine or in the human colon or in any other part of the human body than it can act in box or bottle. Its chief characteristic, as any physicist will tell you, is that of inertia. And that is simply the power to do nothing. And that's what it does. The action is on the part of the body, not that of the drug. I'm not going to take time tonight to go into all the details. I could spend a week talking on that one subject without exhausting it. I want to come down to the subject of hygiene proper. I merely made these statements to give you, if I could, an understanding of what takes place when you take substances of any nature into your body that the body cannot convert into living structure. Only those substances that can be converted into living structure are food, and all other substances, if taken into the body, are poison and must be expelled. And that expulsion requires the expenditure of precious life energy, so that the more of those things the patient is given, the less are his chances of recovery. To recover health, and that is what the majority of people today are interested in, because almost everybody is sick. Only they do not know exactly what they're interested in. They know that they would like to be well, but they want somebody to make them well. If somebody could bore a little hole in their head and put a little funnel in there and pour health into them, they'd be very happy to pay good prices for it. But health is not to be obtained by any such process, or any process analogous to it. Health is to be obtained by processes that are entirely different. And it is this to which I wish to address myself at the beginning. The first requisite for the recovery of health is the removal of causes that have impaired and are impairing health. This has not been the traditional practice in any of the schools of so-called healing. They have sought to treat the patient. Primarily, they have sought to suppress the symptoms. And if they can suppress a symptom, they are happy to announce that the patient is better. Actually, he may be worse. Often, a physician will say that the patient is out of danger, and within 24 hours, the patient is dead. Because the physician, standing in his own light by masking symptoms, by his suppressive measures, does not actually know the condition of his patient. If the patient has pain, he gives an anodyne to relieve the pain, which means that he sandbags the nerves into insensibility. They are no longer able to give a warning. Do you have a headache? He gives you an aspirin or some other drug to stop your headache temporarily. Not something to remove the cause of the headache, but something to temporarily suppress the pain. Do you have constipation? He gives you a laxative or a cathartic, or a purge or a drastic, to force bowel action. He does not do anything to remove the cause of the constipation. Something to force bowel action. But the use of these things invariably makes constipation worse. Do you have a diarrhea? Then he gives you something to check the diarrhea. Not something to remove its cause, but something to check it, such as opium, for example, which will check bowel action. Or if he does not give you a drug to temporarily suppress and palliate your symptoms, he likes to cut upon you. He chops off your toes to cure corns. He cuts off your head to cure headaches. He takes out your appendix to cure appendicitis. He takes out your tonsils to cure tonsillitis. His idea is that the proper way to cure a diseased organ is to remove the organ and destroy it. Now, there are certain organs that can't be removed without resulting in instantaneous death, so he doesn't attempt to remove your brain or heart. So far as the brain is concerned, most people could possibly let theirs be removed because they don't use it. If they did, they wouldn't submit to the practices that I'm describing. You go for operation after operation. For example, a year ago, a little better than a year ago, a friend of mine underwent an operation for an ulcer of the stomach. They removed about half of his stomach. He has another ulcer of the stomach. They didn't remove cause. They removed part of the stomach. So, he has another ulcer. Now they want to operate, take out the rest of the stomach, and unite the esophagus with the duodenum. But they still haven't removed cause. If they do that, there is nothing to prevent the development of a duodenal ulcer, which will call, of course, for another operation. The surgeon is rarely satisfied in a given case. He starts out with the idea that I'll restore this man to health by taking him apart piece by piece and consigning him to the garbage pail. So he gets his teeth, and he gets his tonsils, and he gets his gallbladder, and he gets his appendix, and he gets his prostate gland and his seminal vesicles. If it happens to be a female, he gets her tubes and her ovaries and her womb. He gets anything he can that won't result in instantaneous death. And his idea is that if I can convert this person into a mass of scar tissue and a bundle of nerves, then I can send him to a psychiatrist. And the psychiatrist can tell him all your diseases are all imaginary, there's nothing wrong with you. It's all emotional disturbances, and if we can just get you straightened out emotionally, all will be well. Psychiatry came into existence to help out the surgeon. None of these measures, whether surgical measures or drug measures, are intended even remotely to remove the causes of the trouble. You cannot sober up a drunk man while he continues to drink. If you stop him from drinking, or if he stops drinking, he'll sober up and he doesn't need any treatment to do so. All he needs is to stop drinking, and he will sober up. You cannot cure the tire following work or exercise while the individual continues his activities. But if he ceases his activities and takes a rest, he overcomes his tiredness without any kind of treatment. You cannot restore potency to a sensualist by any kind of gland extract or drug or anything else while he continues his excessive indulgence in sex. You cannot restore health to a glutton while he continues his gluttony. You cannot restore health to one whose health has been broken down by persistent worry. It doesn't matter what kind of a pill you give him or what kind of an operation you perform. Unless he can be induced to cease worrying, he will continue to suffer the effects of worry. You cannot cure a burnt finger if you keep the finger in the fire. Now I say all of these things in the hope that they will bring home to you the necessity for the correction and removal of cause as the first step in the recovery of health. Instead of treatment, instead of searching for so-called cures, and I might point out here that the medical profession has discovered millions of cures in the little more than 3,000 years that it has been in existence. And today it does not have a single cure for a single so-called disease with which man suffers. Oh, I know that it makes a great big fuss about what it's doing with its antibiotics, but it isn't doing very much with antibiotics except doing a lot of damage. The antibiotics will, within 5 more years, they will have been forgotten. Something else will have come along to take their place. Their researchers will find something else to take their place. That's the only reason they have not been discarded already. They haven't yet discovered anything to use instead of them. But they're not curing anybody with it. Don't let them kid you about it. They're producing a tremendous amount of damage. The medical reports in the medical journals are full of evidences of the truth of what I've just said. Some of it leaks out into your daily papers and your magazines. Only it's presented to you on the ground that you have been indiscriminately using them so that they have lost their punch. They're just as toxic today as they were when they were first used. They haven't lost anything. This is an effort to conceal from you the obvious fact that they're failures and that they're very damaging. Now I say, instead of searching for cures, the logical thing would be for us to study causes and effects. If we know causes, we can remove them. When we remove causes, effects cease. If you have an attack in your heel, you can put salve on your heel and bind it up, and you can have penicillin injected into you. But if you leave the tack in your heel, you will continue to have a sore heel. If you take out the tack, then you don't need any salve, and you don't need any penicillin. it automatically and spontaneously heals. That is, when you remove cause, the self-healing powers of the body, and these are the only healing powers in existence. There is nothing outside of you that can heal you. There is nothing that somebody can do to you that can heal you. There is nothing that somebody can give to you that can heal you. There is nothing that they can put into you or take out of you that can heal you. Dr Herbert used to say that the doctor is a man who believes in pouring down things, squirting in things, rubbing on things, cutting out things, and lopping off things. Now, there is nothing in any of these processes that can heal. And there isn't a surgeon in your city, nor any other city, that would dare open your abdomen to remove an organ or for any other purpose, for an exploratory operation or anything else, if he did not know in advance that the self-healing powers of your body will heal that wound that he makes, because he knows that he has nothing that will heal it. But he does know that the body itself possesses the ability and the capacity to heal its own hurts and to remedy its own troubles, providing we remove the causes that are producing and maintaining those troubles. But so long as cause continues to operate, effects must continue to be produced. So it becomes necessary, first of all, that we remove the causes of the disease. It doesn't matter its name. It doesn't matter what particular symptom complex is present. It doesn't matter whether it's in your head or in your foot, whether it's on the surface of the body or internally, whether it's in the heart or the liver, wherever the so-called disease may be located. The removal of cause is the first requisite of recovery. How do we remove cause? Well, obviously, before we can remove it, we've got to know what it is. We've got to discover cause. What is cause? We started a long, long time ago, so far back that history doesn't record for us its origin. But we started out with the belief that disease is due to attacks upon the body by evil spirits, demons, devils. Perhaps there is not anybody in this room tonight who believes that. But it may come as a distinct surprise to you to learn that there are still many thousands of people in these United States who believe as strongly that disease is caused by evil spirits as there are who believe that it's bad luck to walk under a ladder, or 7 years bad luck to break a mirror, or that 13 is an unlucky number. There are just as many people in this country today who still believe in spirit obsession or spirit attacks as there are who believe in astrology. If we go outside of this country, into India, into China, into Siam, into Indochina, into Australia, into Africa, into South America, into Mexico, into the so-called backward countries of the world, and into many of the backward countries of Europe, we will learn to our surprise that more than half of the population of the world today still believes that evil spirits are the cause of disease. We don't believe that anymore. Today we are taught not that evil spirits cause our diseases, but that evil germs and evil viruses attack us. And these are the causes. So actually the fundamental conception of disease and of its causation that is held by the so-called scientific world today does not differ in any essential particular from the fundamental conception of disease that we inherited from the caveman. We still believe in an outside entity that attacks us and seeks to destroy us. And just as we once attempted to exorcise or cast out evil spirits in order to restore the sick to health, so now we attempt to exorcise or cast out or kill evil germs and evil viruses for the same purpose. And for the most part, the methods of casting out or killing the evil germs and the evil viruses are the same as were the methods that were employed to cast out or to expel or exorcise the evil spirits. Our drug system originated in the effort to drive out the evil spirits. Our drug system is still being employed in an effort to drive out evil germs. Our serums and vaccines were originally employed. I know it is a common thought that serums and vaccines represent modern developments. Perhaps it will come as a surprise to you to learn that they were using serums and vaccines 3,000 years ago. That it's primitive, so-called primitive medicine men in savage tribes used serums and vaccines long before Jenner's vaccine was ever invented. They're not modern, and the original use of them was to placate the gods and to drive out the devils. The inoculation practice that preceded vaccination, which was introduced into England by Lady Mary Wortley Montagu about 1750 or 1755, was brought to England by Lady Montagu, who was the wife of a British ambassador to the Ottoman court. She brought it back to England with her from the province of Georgia in southern Europe. It's now a part of Russia, where she found the Georgians inoculating themselves to get the smallpox goddess into a good humor. They took pus from smallpox patients and inoculated themselves. Between the thumb and the first finger, they put in the pus. And that was done because the smallpox goddess was angry, and she was afflicting them with smallpox due to her anger. And that practice was introduced into England and continued in practice for nearly 100 years before the British Parliament finally outlawed it. And out of that practice grew the practice not of inoculating the patient or the well person with pus from the pustules taken from the body of a smallpox patient, but with pus taken from pustules on the abdomen of a cow which had been previously infected with pus taken from pustules on the body of a smallpox patient. That's the way vaccine is made. Vaccine comes from the Latin vacca, V-A-C-C-A, meaning cow. I believe that is still the Italian word for cow. The word comes from the Latin word for cow, and originally it was thought that cowpox, the pus from cowpox sores, would prevent smallpox. But cowpox is such a rare disease that they could not keep a supply of vaccine on hand because they didn't have enough sick cows to get enough pus from. So they devised the present method of taking pus from smallpox patients and using it with which to infect the cow. They shave a place about a foot square on the underside of her abdomen. They make about 100 incisions in that shaved place. They rub pus from smallpox patients into those incisions. They tie up the cow so that she cannot lick those incisions or sores that follow. They fester or they suppurate. Large quantities of pus are formed. They take the cow down after a certain time and take out all of that pus. They run it through what is called a defibrinator to take out all the particles of flesh and scab and hair and so forth that may get into it. So what they call pure lymph turns out to be nothing but pus. They mix it with glycerine and send it out over the country to put into your arms and the arms of your children on the theory that it will prevent smallpox. It is not a new practice. It was used in India 1500 BC. And at that time, the zebu calf, which is another form of cow, was used from which to get the vaccine. Right now, we are facing a move or a program that is intended to vaccinate 1 million children in this country this summer. The program is already in operation. Children are being vaccinated now with a vaccine, which it is hoped will prevent polio. In other words, what is going on now is a vast experiment using children as guinea pigs. Babies and children are being used as guinea pigs. Laboratories, modern laboratories, cost a lot of money for building. and a lot of money to equip them with all the machinery and plant structure that they need. And to equip them with a staff of researchers costs a lot of money. And to operate them costs a lot of money. And it costs money to buy guinea pigs and to buy rats and to buy monkeys and to buy large numbers of other animals upon which to experiment. But it doesn't cost anything to experiment upon children. Misguided and frightened parents submit their children to these experiments because they're frightened and because they're misinformed, without requiring that they be paid for the use of the child in the experiment, and without even requiring that the physician who performs the experiment give a written guarantee that the child will not be damaged in the experiment, and that if the child is damaged in the experiment, damages will be paid. No such written guarantee is ever required by these frightened and misinformed parents. They simply take their children meekly, humbly to the pus punchers, as I call them, and have the pus, the putrid products of animal diseases, inoculated into their children in the vain hope, I say vain hope, because in all history, vaccines and serums have never prevented any disease, except in those cases, and there have been lots of these, where death has resulted from the vaccination and the inoculation. In these cases, the individual is protected by the immunizing potency of death. There ought to be nationwide opposition, vigorous, determined opposition to this program, rather than meek submission. But the newspapers and the magazines are going to be filled from now on till the end, to the completion of that vast experiment, with propaganda of various kinds designed to frighten parents and to induce them to submit their children to the experiment. You will be told and are being told that the vaccine is safe. There is no such thing as a safe vaccine. It is not even safe to inoculate distilled water into the human body. The white of an egg is deadly if injected into the human body. Any substance, it doesn't matter how innoxious or even how helpful it may be, if it is taken into the digestive system and undergoes the process of digestion and is prepared for entrance into the bloodstream, that same substance, if inoculated directly into the bloodstream without being digested, is a rank poison. There are no safe vaccines and there are no safe serums. And anyone who will take the trouble to study the history and the pathology of serums and vaccines will know that what I'm telling you is absolute truth. We went through a war not long back, and you remember the cases of death and soldiers in hospitals with jaundice following serum inoculations. Not just one serum, but several serums. We have plenty of deaths and plenty of jaundice following blood transfusions. Blood transfusions are just as damaging as serums, and they produce some symptoms that even serums don't produce. It's a popular racket. The Red Cross collects the blood from you for nothing, and the hospital charges you $25 a pint for it. It reminds me of a story. A Gentile asked two Jewish friends to tell him how to make money. And one of the Jews says, well, now if you buy something for a dime and sell it for a dime, that's not good business. If you buy it for a dime and sell it for a quarter, that's not good business. If you buy it for a dime and sell it for 50 cents, that's good business. But if you buy it for a dime and sell it for $1, that's really good business. And the other Jew says, I know something that's better business than that. And he said, well, what is it? He says, become a medical man. If you're a medical man, you don't buy anything and you don't sell anything. You just write a few letters words on a piece of paper, and you get $5 for it. They get the blood for nothing and they charge you $25 for it, and $10 for administering it. So you pay $35 for that pint, or more, depending on what part of the country you're in. But have you noticed that transfused patients are dying as rapidly as the untransfused, and often more rapidly and more quickly? Transfusion is just a grandstand play that is profitable and impressive, but saves no lives. Transfusion does not remove cause. Serums and vaccines do not remove cause. The knives and saws of the surgeon do not remove cause. Drugs do not remove cause. And the removal of cause is the one thing needed. Now let's go back to cause. Let us forget about the idea that cause is due to the weather, or that it's due to the fact that Adam and Eve ate an apple, or that God is punishing us for our sins. Let us forget that the stars have any influence on human health and human life. Let's not think that we're sick because we were born under a wrong sign of the zodiac or something of that kind. Let us not think of the ancient ideas about cause. They were guesses of ignorant people. They were guesses of people who had no knowledge of the human body, no knowledge of anatomy, no knowledge of physiology, no knowledge of biology, no knowledge of any of the biological sciences at all. And they guessed, and they guessed, and they guessed again. Let us think of the human body for a few minutes and see if we can trace the evolution of disease. The first fact that I want to present to you, and there isn't time tonight to go into great details in a lot of these things, so some of my statements are going to sound to you as though they're dogmatic. And that's going to be because I'm just going to give you the naked statement and not try to take time to show you the basis for the statement. Nerve energy, whatever it is, and I don't know what it is, nerve energy is functioning power. Without nerve energy, there is not an organ or a gland in your body that can function. Consequently, the functional efficiency of the various organs of your body is determined by the amount of nerve energy that you have on hand at any given time. If you have a normal supply of nerve energy, there will be normal function. If nerve energy is low, function will lag correspondingly. Now, nerve energy is not a fixed quantity. It rises and falls in keeping with our activity. We have more or less at one time or at another, depending upon how we expended or how we regenerated or recuperated. The condition of lowered nerve energy is a condition to which we have attached the term enervation. A lack of energy, a lack of nerve energy, enervation. Enervation checks function because there is less energy with which to carry on function. Perhaps I could make that a little more clear to you by a simple illustration using your automobile. In the automobile, there is a storage battery from which runs a cable. And from that cable branches wires that go to the various parts of the car that are electrically operated. Wires go to your spark plugs, to your starter, to your horn, to your lights, to your radio, to your cigarette lighter, and other parts of the car. Now, you have a car that is complete in every detail, and you have a well-charged battery, and you get into the car and you step on the starter, and the engine is turned over quickly. You have plenty of spark, your engine starts, and you go sailing down the highway. Perhaps a cop after you because you sailed too fast. You turn on your lights and they burn brightly. You press your horn button and it honks loudly. You turn on your radio and it plays, and you enjoy the music, or the soap opera, or the cigarette ads. Whichever you enjoy something, or else you turn it off. But let us assume that the battery has been permitted to run down. Then you get in your car and you step on the starter and the engine grunts. You may have enough juice to turn the engine over, but it turns it over slowly and you have poor ignition and the engine doesn't start. So you get somebody to give you a push to get started. Or you take your battery and have it recharged. You turn on your lights and they burn, but they burn dimly. You honk your horn, but it doesn't honk loudly. You turn on your radio and it plays for a few minutes and then it starts making a lot of funny noises and it quits. Now that is a condition of innervation. When you are innervated, your own starter doesn't work. Your own ignition is poor. Your own lights in the horn, when you press the buttons, don't work as they should. They too are inefficient. And your body doesn't run down the highway as it should. That is the condition of innervation, a condition of lowered nerve energy, when the nervous batteries are run down. In that condition, function lags. Function is inefficient. One of the first effects of lowered function is that of the checking of elimination. Waste matter that forms in the body every second of our lives from before birth until death as normal byproducts of the processes of living, normal byproducts of the functions of life, waste matter that is continuously forming and that normally is as continuously being eliminated is held up in the body because elimination is impaired. Part of it is eliminated, part of it is retained to accumulate in the blood, in the lymph, in the tissues, producing the state that we call toxemia. Toxemia is the universal basic cause of all of our so-called diseases. When I was in college, we had 407 diseases in the nosologies. This is the term for the classification of diseases. At the present time, there are more than 20,000. And yet all of these names for various so-called diseases are merely names for the same conditions and the same actions in different parts of the body. And so great has been the tendency to make new diseases that the same condition in different parts of the anatomy, even if it's only a quarter of an inch away, receives another name. I'm not going into that in detail this evening. I merely want to say that inflammation in the little toe on the right foot and inflammation in the thumb on the left hand, instead of being two diseases, although they'll have two names, instead of being two diseases, are one and the same thing. Inflammation of the tonsils does not differ in any particular nor in any essential from inflammation of the appendix or of the gallbladder or of the liver or of the kidneys or of the brain. The symptoms, the differences in the so-called diseases that result are differences in symptoms, and these depend upon the structure and function of the organ that is inflamed. The stomach can't think. Let's put it this way, the stomach can't cough, and the lungs can't vomit. The kidneys can't think, and the brain can't urinate. That are present when an organ is inflamed are merely alterations in the structure and function of that organ, so that the distinguishing symptoms are supplied by the structure and function of the involved organ rather than by the so-called disease, the inflammation. Inflammation is the same in each organ. And so we might go on through the whole list of so-called diseases and take them up one by one, and we'd find that we're dealing with the same thing. Disease is a unit. Names, well, let the other fellow have the names. What you want is recovery, and to recover you must remove cause, and to remove cause you must know what it is. Toxemia, then, is the result of checked elimination, and checked elimination is the result of innervation, and innervation is the result of a lowering of nerve energy. By what? Energy is used up in activity, whether it's electrical energy, steam power, gasoline power, or whatever type of energy you may be employing, or life energy, whatever it is, nerve energy, It is used up or consumed in doing work. And that's what we have it for, to do work with it. We become enervated only when we use it up excessively, when we daily use it beyond our power to recuperate it or to regenerate it, so that there's a gradual lessening of nerve energy. By dissipation of all types, by overwork, by overeating, by sexual excesses, by worry, by fear, by anxiety, by grief, by jealousy, by self-pity, by other types of emotions of that kind, by stimulant using, coffee using, tobacco using, tea using, alcohol using, the use of condiments and sauces and salt, the use of constipation cures, headache remedies, drugs to relieve the distress that follows eating the ordinary meals. By the use of all these things, we dissipate energy. By lack of sleep, we fail to recuperate, because recuperation or regeneration of energy takes place during rest and sleep. If we do not get sufficient sleep, we become enervated. Now, if we want to get well, there are three things that we must do in removing cause. We must eliminate the accumulated toxins from the body. We must restore normal nerve energy. And we must correct the mode of living that is responsible for the enervation. The first, that is the elimination of toxins, is something that is going on from before birth until death. It is a continuous process. It's not something that we start and stop at will. But it is something that is not going on at a normal rate because of enervation. And we must provide means to step up that process of elimination in order that we may eliminate the accumulated toxins. How may we do that? First, we can do it by ceasing all unnecessary activity. This means rest. We stop work, we go to bed, we rest. When we do that, there is an immediate increase in elimination, because all of the energy that is commonly used up in our daily activities, our work, our play, our walking, our singing, our talking, and whatever other activities we engage in, all the energy that we daily expend in these activities is immediately available with which to increase the work of elimination. If we poise our mind, if we get away into a quiet place where we are not disturbed by noises and by gossipy people, and then otherwise emotionally upset, and if we cultivate mental poise, all of the energy thus saved is also immediately available for use in stepping up the process of elimination. Now we have another means of stepping up that process even more rapidly, and that is the means that we call physiological rest. These others were mental, physical, and sensory rest. Now we have physiological rest. Physiological rest is achieved by ceasing to eat, or, if not ceasing to eat completely, by greatly reducing the food intake. The amount of work that the organs of the body have to do is determined by the amount of food we eat. The more we eat, the more work that is thrown upon the digestive system, for example. The more work the heart has to do. The more work the lungs and the kidneys and the liver. All of these organs have to work harder, and the glands, various glands of the body, have to work harder in proportion to the increase in food intake. The less we eat, the less work they have to perform. So that we take a patient who has a blood pressure of, let us say, 150, systolic, a pulse rate of 80 beats a minute, and we put him to bed and stop him from eating. And within a very few days, the blood pressure will be down perhaps to 115 or 120. And the pulse count will be 60 and sometimes lower. But let's stop at 60. We have a pulse rate of 60. We had a pulse rate of 80. This means that there are 20 beats or 20 pulsations a minute fewer that the heart is performing. Not only performing fewer pulsations, but due to the fact that blood pressure is lower, it is not having to perform as vigorously in order to overcome the resistance to the flow of blood. Now, 20 beats a minute is 1,200 beats an hour that the heart saves. multiply it by 7, and you get the number of pulsations in a week that is saved by that lessened work on the part of the heart. And that's just one part of the physiological rest that is achieved by fasting. By these three processes, nerve energy is restored, and toxins, the elimination of toxins from the body, is hastened. The other part of our program, that of correcting the mode of living, is just as essential as what I have just gone over. It is not possible to restore nerve energy by putting a patient to bed and letting him continue his enervating practices. I know there are rest resorts in the country where patients are put to bed for rest and they're permitted to smoke. I've gone into some of them where at regular intervals during the day a man or an attendant went around with a great large galvanized can, GI cans we called them during World War I, they now call the boys GIs, with wheels on it, and he's got it full of water, of ice water, and he's just taking it out of a refrigerator. And he carries it around to the beds of each patient, and they can take out what they want, Coca-Cola, or Canada Dry, or Pepsi-Cola, or Dr. Pepper, or something else, and have a drink of that, a bottle of that. And they give them coffee for breakfast. And in other ways, they permit those patients to continue carrying on the very practices that enervated them to begin with. Such a program is destined to failure in all cases. They get only a certain amount of rest. In some of these institutions, not only are the patients still permitted to carry on their accustomed poison practices, poison habits, but they're stuffed on large meals 3 times a day and permitted to eat between meals as well, so that overeating is carried on, which means more enervation. The patients are worried sick about their various troubles. The doctor comes in and frightens them and tells them they're going to have an operation, or we may have to have an operation, and they keep running them through the various programs of examination, of x-raying, and so forth, and this alone is enough to make a patient into a hypochondriac in a short time. In addition to that, they're drugged, or they're given sweat baths, and massages, and electrical treatments, and things of this kind, all of which are enervating. There's hardly a thing that is done by the various doctors of the various schools of so-called healing in treating the sick that is not an enervating practice, that does not help to prolong the patient's illness, or to render the patient hopelessly and helplessly sick. They hardly know the meaning of the term rest. And if the patient doesn't sleep, they give him a hypnotic or a soporific drug. And they keep that up until the patient develops a drug habit, which simply means that he doesn't have any habit at all, that he has so much nerve damage that he goes back to the cause of the damage every time to be re-narcotized. For as soon as he eliminates the drug from his body, and the true condition of his nerves becomes apparent, the uneasiness, the misery, the pain, the suffering that it results from that nerve damage makes life so intolerable for the individual that he goes back and re-narcotizes himself. And there's no habit connected with it. It's simply damage and disease. It's the same thing as the morphine addict, taking morphine to relieve himself of the distress that was caused by prior use of morphine. Like the old lady who takes her cup of coffee to relieve herself of headache that was caused by her prior habit of using coffee. It's the same story. Sleeplessness is a symptom, and the patient gets well of sleeplessness when the causes that have produced it are removed, and then he sleeps again. And anything other than removing cause that may be done to get that patient to apparently sleep is harmful. Now, a state of narcosis, a state of depression, a state of drug-induced hypnosis is not sleep. It is a state of poisoning. You're unconscious, yes, but so are you unconscious if somebody strikes you over the head with a club hard enough. But you do not mistake that state of unconsciousness for sleep. Why should the state of unconsciousness resulting from poisoning be mistaken for sleep? the condition of the patient when he recovers consciousness the following morning or soon before, the condition of lassitude, of weakness, of trembling, of nausea, sometimes of vomiting, of lack of appetite, the blurred eyes, the coated tongue, the pasty teeth, the foul breath, the frontal headache. All of these symptoms indicate that the patient has not slept and has not been refreshed by his period of poisoning. That is, of course, a foolish way of treating the sick, or of treating sickness or sleeplessness. And every once in a while you pick up your newspaper and you read where some prominent individual, such for instance recently as Corinne Calvé of the movies, has accidentally or purposely taken an overdose of a sleeping pill, of a sedative. Overdoses are easy to take because the patient who is narcotized with these things and not fully conscious may easily reach over and take another one without realizing that he had already taken one and get an overdose. On the other hand, the effect of the drug itself upon the patient often leads them to deliberately take the overdose in an effort to commit suicide. It is necessary that the patient stop all enervating habits, not just temporarily. If you want to remain well after you have regained health, it is necessary that you stay away from them thereafter. Don't return. Like the sow that was washed and returned to her wallowing in the mire, don't return to your bad habits once you have corrected them. Don't go back to smoking. Don't go back to overeating. Don't go back to coffee and to tea and to alcohol. Don't go back to any of your bad habits. Once you have gotten away from the worry habit, don't recultivate it. And it can become a terrible habit. It can make life miserable. And you learn to worry and worry and worry about everything. And about nothing. Some people worry so much that I get the idea that they wouldn't be happy if they didn't have something to worry about. They worry, if they don't have anything real to worry about, they worry about imaginary things. They worry about things that they think are going to happen, and they never happen for some reason or other. But they just keep worrying and worrying. There are two things you should never worry about. The things that you can't help, and the things that you can help. If you can help them, go and do it. And if you can't, dismiss them and go on about your business. Stop the worry. Now, the best way to get over the worry habit, however, is to get yourself into such a fine state of health that nothing causes you to worry. Healthy people don't worry. Healthy people have troubles, but they meet them. They meet them courageously. They don't shrink from them. They don't run from them. They don't worry about them. They go out and solve those problems and overcome their difficulties. All of our emotional habits that are injurious must be eliminated from our lives. And all of our poison habits, our stimulant habits, must be discontinued. Our overwork must be discontinued. Some of us imagine we're overworked when we're not. As a matter of fact, I see very few people who are genuinely overworked. The average individual of today is doing 2 hours work a day and taking 8 hours to do it in, and lamenting the fact that he's overworked. The things that are overworking him are his tea and his coffee and his tobacco and his soda fountain slops and his overeating and his sexual excesses and his late hours and other things of that kind. These are the things that are really bringing about the condition of overwork, and it's genuine overwork. It's not because he's plowing too long or working too hard as an automobile mechanic or doing too much work as a bookkeeper or screwing on too many nuts on an automobile in the factory or anything of the kind. It's simply that he's overworking himself by his dissipations of one type or another. And all of this must be discontinued. And you must see to it daily that you daily receive sufficient rest and sleep to fully recuperate from your day's activities. If sometime an emergency arises when you can't do that, then a little extra sleep later and a little extra rest will quickly take care of it. But the common practice is not to take the extra rest and sleep, but to resort to a stimulant. I watched a family. The father was dying. They all knew that he was going to die. They knew there was nothing could be done for him. They were there. They were with him. One member of the family refused all stimulants. Coffee was a stimulant that was being used to keep awake during the night while they watched at the bedside of the father. One member of the family refused the coffee. He took nothing. All the rest of the family had frequent cups of coffee. When morning came, they were practically all in the same condition as the dying father, except the one person who hadn't taken any coffee, and he was as fresh as in the evening before. We dissipate our energies under these circumstances more by our use of stimulants to keep us awake and fall asleep. I saw them actually fall asleep before morning, whereas the one who did not take the coffee did not fall asleep. They actually fell asleep from exhaustion, and exhaustion induced by stimulation. And more of us are overworking ourselves in these ways than ever overwork ourselves at what we ordinarily call work. It is essential that we correct our mode of living, and then that we maintain a right mode of living if we want to maintain the health that we have gained. Now, the second element in the recovery of health, the first, let me emphasize, is the removal of all causes, not one, not two, not a few, but all causes that are impairing health and that are maintaining that impairment. The second requisite of health, or of recovery and of health, is to supply the body with all of the primordial requisites of healthy life. Now, what are they? Well, there's arsenic, and there's penicillin, and there's streptomycin, and there are the sulfonamides, and there's Alka-Seltzer. There's 5 of them. Here are the 5 primordial requirements of health. Without these, you can't live. Or am I mixed up here? Is there something wrong? Is it not rather that food is one of the primary requisites of life without which we can't live? Something that we need in a state of health and can't get along without. We can get along without penicillin in a state of health, can't we? We all know that. We may believe it, but we all know that we don't need it when we're well. We all know that if we take it when we're well, it makes us sick. Then there is pure water. Of course, you don't have any here. Your water's been chlorinated and iodized and otherwise doctored and drugged and poisoned until you don't get pure water. They may have fluoridated it. I don't know yet. Have they? So you've got rat poison added to your water. Oh yes, they use it to kill rats. They put it out for rats to eat, to kill them. And they put it in your water to save your teeth. And they know full well that it will not save your teeth. But it's a byproduct of the aluminum industry. And the aluminum company wants to sell more of its byproducts to make more profits. So, your water supply has been further poisoned. You need pure water. And you need fresh air. Of course, you're in the city. Your air is polluted with fumes from factories and gas from your automobiles and otherwise polluted. You get very little pure air. But that is one of the requisites of health. And you need sunshine. Of course, you don't get much of it. In the first place, you insist on covering your body with a lot of clothes, getting it up around here, so that no sun can ever reach you. In the next place, you live in a city where there are more shadows than sunshine. So you get very little sun. You stay indoors most of the time. You stay in the house or in the office or in the workshop or in the factory. You don't get out into the sunshine. Sunshine is one of the requisites of not merely of plant life, but of animal life. I once visited a jail. And I saw in that jail a young man who had been in there for more than a year, awaiting trial. He was in a part of the country where nobody knew him. He didn't have a friend in that part of the country. He was arrested on a charge for which they had very slim evidence. And every time, as he couldn't get bail, they kept him in jail. And every time that his trial was called, the detective that was responsible for his arrest found it convenient to be out of the city. So the man was in jail for more than a year before he was finally turned loose. Oh, he hadn't committed the crime. They had very slim evidence to go on in charging him. But they kept him in jail for all that time anyhow. Now there he was in a sunless building. The food was bad, as it is in all of our jails. But the man was as white almost as a sheet from that long period in semi-darkness without any sunshine. You can imagine the condition of the man's blood if you understand that sunshine is important to the building of good blood and important to maintaining good blood. If you understand that you can actually increase the number of red blood cells by sunbathing, and that you can increase the amount of lime and phosphorus in the blood by sunbathing, you would understand that the man's blood was also badly deteriorated. Not just that his skin had lost all color. The blood too had lost color and quality, but bones and muscles and nerves and glands also are injured by lack of sunshine. Then there is exercise or physical activity that is a requisite of life and of health. And some of us would rather die than exercise. We'd rather sit around all day long and munch chocolates and grow fat than to take a little exercise. And there are rest and sleep, both of which are forms of rest that are just as necessary to healthful life as exercise. And we like to spend our nights at the theater playing bridge, playing cards, watching ball games, wrestling matches, boxing bouts, or something else, all of which are commendable enough, except we carry them to such an excess that we never get sufficient sleep. I used to practice in New York City years ago, and it was nothing uncommon for me to ask a patient, "What time do you go to bed at night?" and get the reply, "Oh, I go to bed early." How early, I would say? "Oh, early in the morning." Spend the night out, eating sandwiches, eating hamburgers, eating hot dogs, eating midnight lunches, drinking poison soft drinks. And they call them soft drinks because only soft saps drink them. Dancing, smoking, not resting, but driving themselves with stimulants. Come home late, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, go to bed. Can't sleep under the conditions. Too stimulated for one thing. Too filled up with indigestible food for another. So they roll and they toss in a state of awakeness or semi-consciousness until the alarm clock goes off in the morning. Then they get up very languidly and rub their eyes and stagger around and go to their icebox and get an eye-opener, or into the bathroom and have a cold bath for an eye-opener. It's difficult to tell which is worse, that morning cold bath or the morning glass of beer or whiskey. They're both bad. Both of them are used for the same purpose, to stimulate them. Their bowels won't move, so they take a laxative or a cathartic. They have to blast the things open. They eat a meal and they're suffering with distress, not merely because they have no energy with which to digest it, not merely because they are overeating, but also because they eat their foods in haphazard and indiscriminate combinations that no stomach on the face of the earth could digest. So they're full of gas, and they're distressed. So they have an Alka-Seltzer. They take a couple of those large tablets and drop them in a glass of water, and they watch them effervesce. Now that's very, very wonderful, that effervescence. Just a little bubbling. Just gas bubbles. What is Alka-Seltzer? baking soda and aspirin. Baking soda and aspirin. That's Alka-Seltzer. So they swallow it down. It gives them a little temporary relief from their distress, but they have another meal after a while, and they're again distressed. So they have another Alka-Seltzer. Following the next meal, they have more distress, and they take another Alka-Seltzer. But what's their condition through the day after a night of that kind? Languid, listless, energyless, but they got to work. So they smoke 2 packages of cigarettes, 3 packages of cigarettes, 4 packages of cigarettes. They go out at frequent intervals during the day and have a cup of coffee or a bottle of Coca-Cola. They take a break, as they say in the advertising. Don't they realize that the only thing that's being broken is themselves? Or they take some beer. Coffee, Coca-Cola, beer, tobacco. These things are used to drive them through another day, stimulating their life away. And they're very sincere when they tell you that they can't get along without them. They really believe that they can't get along without them. Little do they realize that the trouble with them is that they've been getting along with them too long. Their present condition is due to the very fact that they've been getting along with them, been driving themselves with these whips and lashes, rather than getting the needed rest and sleep that would enable them to recuperate and regenerate their nerve energy so that they would have energy with which to carry on the day's activities. Now, in addition to these things, we need cleanliness. Most of us today take our weekly bath. Some of us get a bath twice a year, whether we need it or not. Others get it every Saturday. And some of us overbathe. I've seen people that couldn't get along unless they had 2 and 3 baths a day. And they just love to get in the bathtub or under the shower and stay there and soak and soak and soak and soak. When you wash your face, do you put it down in the lavatory and soak it for half an hour? Of course you don't. Some of you women never put water on your face at all because you're afraid it'll ruin your complexions. You always clean your faces with cleansing creams. But when you get in the bathtub and get the water on the rest of your skin, you stay there for half an hour or longer and you soak and you soak and you soak. You come out and the end of your fingers are all wrinkled up from the losses to your tissues. And you soap yourself. You imagine you can't get clean unless you've got some of that soap on you. I assume most of you use Lux because 4 out of 5 Hollywood stars use Lux. You have to have a hot bath, and then you have to follow it with a cold bath. And why do you take the cold one? To close up the pores, so you won't catch cold. Sure. Don't you know that cold water will cause cold air will cause the pores to close just as rapidly as cold water will? And besides that, exposure to cold doesn't cause colds anyhow. You get your colds at the dining room table. You don't catch them and they don't catch you. You develop them. You develop them out of enervating habits and gluttonous habits. The way to take a bath is to get in your tub or under your shower and give yourself a good rubbing, just like you rub your face when you clean it. And do it quickly, and get it over with, and get out and dry yourself off. And don't make a luxury and a ritual out of bathing. Some of you go into the bathroom with a book to read, and you get in the tub and you lie there and read. And others of you never do any singing until you get in there, and you lie in the tub and sing for a long time. Even if you can't sing, well, you try it. All that soaking is enervating. Hot bathing is enervating. Cold bathing is enervating. The best thing is to have the temperature of the water as close to body temperature as possible so that there will be the least amount of loss of nerve energy in resisting heat and cold. Then you'll not enervate yourself. Now we need, in addition to all this, mental poise. Dr. Weger used to say that we are either poised or poisoned. And it's literally true. if you cultivate and maintain a condition of poise, you can do nothing else that will conserve nerve energy as that does. But a condition of worry, of anxiety, of fear, of jealousy, of self-pity, that kind of a emotional life that finds you up in the clouds one minute and down in the dumps the next. Things of this kind rapidly expend nerve energy. As a matter of fact, fear can expend nerve energy so rapidly that it can actually produce instantaneous death. So it behooves us to cultivate poise. Aside from the cultivation of good health, which will help you to cultivate poise, I believe that St. Paul's formula is as good as any that can be offered you to carry out in your daily life. I'm not going to attempt to quote him verbatim because it's been a long, long time since I read it. But he said, whatsoever things are good, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on these things. That is, think on the good things. Think on the true things. Think on the things of good report. Think on the lovely things. Don't spend your time thinking always on the ugly things of life, on the evils of life. Oh, they have to be faced. They're with us. There are plenty of them. But don't spend your whole life thinking about them. Face them when they come. But try to maintain a different attitude of life to that of the person who is constantly bemoaning the evils of the world. There was a lady met me out in the hall there this evening with a petition. She asked me if I'd say a few words about it here tonight, and I said I'd be glad to do so. She has a petition asking Congress to stop the H-bomb experiments. I signed it at the top, so if you want to follow suit, okay. If they don't stop soon, they're going to do a lot more damage than they've already done. They already know what the H-bomb will do. They already know how to produce it. They can produce larger ones than they are now producing without having to explode them and destroy half the earth in doing it. I think it would be well for them to stop it. But I am not going to go through this country and through my life worrying over the H-bomb and the atom bomb. I find people that are frightened. They're afraid that we're going to have an atomic war. And they're constantly shivering in their boots for fear that war is going to start tomorrow and they're going to be killed by the first explosion. My own view is that an atomic war is a very remote possibility. Certainly I'm not going to worry about it. I'm not going to kill myself worrying about something that may never come. I believe that there might have been use of atomic weapons and hydrogen weapons. There might be such use if only one nation had them. We did use it when we were alone. We alone had it. I think every man and woman and child in America ought to hang his and her head in shame for what happened. But we did it. And we would do it again. I don't doubt it at all if we were the only one who had the bomb. But inasmuch as we aren't the only one, and somebody may drop one on us if we drop one on them, or we may drop one on them if they drop one on us, I believe both sides are going to behave themselves. They're going to bluff and bluster and rattle swords and threaten each other and send each other notes and accuse each other of all the crimes in the calendar. But when it comes to the real act of doing something, they're going to both sit down and behave themselves. That's my opinion of it. So I think those of you who are afraid of atomic war ought to dismiss your fears and begin to go through life with a little more courage and a little more hope and a little more cheer and a little more optimistic outlook upon the future than some of you have today. Poise, courage, hope, cheer, love, optimism. These are the mental states that are helpful, that are healthful, and that will help you to regain and to maintain health. and fear and worry and anxiety and self-pity and jealousy and anger and grief and all of the other so-called destructive emotions will help you to build and to maintain sickness. Now, let me take just a brief minute to sum up what I have said before I turn the meeting back to your president. And let me remind you before I do that after he has his say, we will have that question and answer period. And while I don't advise you to stay up all night and don't like to do it myself, I want you to understand that I can stay here just as long as you can and answer questions as long as you throw them at me if I know the answer. I always reserve the right not to answer a question if I don't know the answer. And believe me, I'm not afraid to say I don't know if I don't know. But let me sum up. The first requisite of recovery of health is to remove all causes that are impairing and that are maintaining the impairment of health. These causes are habits of living and environmental influences that use up nerve energy in excess of our ability to regenerate or recuperate energy during the hours that we allot to rest and repose. Lowered nerve energy lessens function, checks elimination, impairs digestion, impairs function throughout the body, and brings about the blood and flesh condition that we call toxemia, which is the cause, the immediate cause, and the basic cause of all of our so-called diseases. To get well, then, we must first eliminate toxemia, restore normal nerve energy, and correct all of the enervating habits, practices, indulgences, and environmental influences that are responsible for the enervation. Following this, and carried along simultaneously with it, at least in part, it becomes necessary that we supply the body with all of the primordial requisites of healthy life, which means food, air, water, sunshine, exercise, rest, sleep, cleanliness, and mental poise. Now, I talked last night in New York, and maybe I talked a little longer than I did here tonight, and at the end of my talk, one woman complained very much that I hadn't told her what to eat. You have lecturers coming to your city that have foods to sell. Foods and near foods and half foods, miracle foods that are just as good as penicillin, some of them. They have powdered skim milk, they have yogurt, they have blackstrap molasses, they have yeast, they have various kinds of whole grain products, they have various types of vitamins and mineral preparations, and they have all kinds of things to sell, and they spend their time telling you what these things will do for you, and they sell you these things. And they leave them in your health food store so that you can buy a new supply when your present supply has run out and they're no longer on hand. And they tell you these things to eat. I haven't any such things to sell you. I'm not offering you any foods. I say to you, eat foods, real foods, not patented and processed foods of one kind or another, not miracle foods, but eat the genuine foods from your own gardens and orchards, and from the gardens and orchards nearby as you can get them, but eat fruits and vegetables and nuts in particular, and don't glut yourself. Now there are those who put you on juice, and they try to feed you plenty of juice, and they sell you juice extractors, and they want you to take juice, gallons of it. If you follow their advice, you spend your whole day in the kitchen making juice. You actually wear yourself out making juice. I've had patient after patient come to me from various parts of the country who were on these juice diets, and they'd bought a juice extractor. And they've said, I spent so much time in the kitchen making juice that at the end of the day I was worse than when I started. And after a few weeks on juice, I'm worse than when I began the juice diet, because they were exhausting themselves. And they needed rest. And they were given more work to do. And they were overflowing their body with an excess of fluid and an excess of acids, causing trouble. A lady came to me last night in New York City, and she showed me her hands, and she says, what's the matter with my hands? I'm a vegetarian, but I'm all yellow. I said, you've been drinking a lot of carrot juice. Yes. I said, that's what's the matter with your hands. Cut it out. Oh, yes, I see that too. They take carrot juice in excess. You can take carrot juice if you want to, but you don't have to swill it down you like a river. The main thing is to eat wholesome, natural foods as far as possible in their natural state without being cooked or processed or refined in any way. Eat them in moderation and in proper combinations. Now, I haven't time to give you a lecture on food combining tonight. And my little book on food combining has been out of print for a few weeks, and a new edition will be off the press this week, but I don't have any with me. So if you want to buy a copy, you can give the order to the girl at the door and we'll mail it to you. But I can't give you a lecture on food combining this evening. Now, with these few remarks, I want to turn the meeting back to your president.
Again, Dr. Shelton, on behalf
Thank
of
you.
all that have heard you, I want to say a very heartfelt thank you for coming to us.
Thank you very much. And I'm very happy to have talked
The preceding talk by Dr. Herbert M. Shelton was delivered at Rochester, New York on April 28, 1954. Other talks by Dr. Shelton are available. Send a self-addressed stamped envelope to E.J. Weibert, W-E-I-B-E-R-T, P.O. Box 110, Pullman, P-U-L-L-M-A-N, West Virginia 26421. If you have any comments on these tapes by Dr. Shelton, please feel free to write. Thank you. The remainder of this side of the tape is blank.